Tantor Audio, a division of Recorded Books, presents The Turnaround. How to Build Life-Changing Confidence by Darrin Donnelly. Narrated by Jonathan Todd Ross. Introduction. People with confident, optimistic outlooks tend to succeed. People who are pessimistic, who lack confidence, tend to fail. Dr. Bob Rotella, world-renowned sports psychologist. Confidence is essential to success, happiness, and peace of mind. If we don't believe we can accomplish something, we won't. If we don't feel good about ourselves, we won't be happy. If we don't believe in ourselves, we'll never be at peace with who we are and what we're capable of. Yet sometimes it seems like right when we most need a boost of self-confidence, it is nowhere to be found. We've all been there. Those times when it feels like life is working against us. When we have a losing season, we face a financial or health crisis, we lose a job, or we just seem to be encountering one big problem after another. It's during those tough times when we often lose our self-confidence, which only makes matters worse. We start doubting ourselves, questioning whether we will get back on our feet, wondering how we will ever turn things around. This book will teach you how to build and maintain confidence, no matter what is going on around you, in good times and in bad. No matter how dire the situation, every turnaround starts with renewed self-confidence. It is the catalyst for getting back up, conquering your problems, and feeling good about yourself again. A person will tend to perform up to or down to his or her self-image, and the person with a confident, positive self-image will outperform the person with an insecure, negative self-image in pretty much every area of life. That is why confidence plays such a vital role in the type of life you live. The most confident team usually ends up winning the game. The most confident salesperson usually leads his or her team in sales. The most confident leaders tend to lead the most successful organizations. Confidence plays a crucial role in our personal lives as well. Self-confident people feel good about themselves. They have healthier relationships. They worry less. They enjoy life more. But despite knowing how important confidence is, we also know how fickle it can be. Coaches will tell you that one of the questions they most often hear from athletes is, how can I build more confidence? Self-doubt and insecurity hold so many of us back from the success we desire. Many people have surrendered to the false belief that confidence only comes after success, not realizing how important it is to build confidence first in order to succeed at a higher level. Others have come to believe they just aren't the confident type, as though confidence is something genetically given to only a select few in this world. The fact is, confidence can and must be generated from within if you want to be successful. Not only is a healthy level of self-confidence required for success, but it's also necessary for your well-being. Happiness and peace of mind will always be fleeting if you're racked with self-doubt and insecurity. Adding to the challenge of acquiring confidence is the fact that confidence can be a tricky thing to quantify. How much is enough? People sometimes worry about becoming too confident, and therefore err on the side of timidity. This book will teach you how to build a healthy level of confidence and eliminate the self-doubt that holds you back. Like all books in the Sports for the Soul series, this is an inspirational fable. It's a story written from the perspective of a man looking back at the confidence-building lessons he learned as a college football player 3 decades ago. Lessons that carried him to success and happiness well beyond the football field. Once an insecure fourth-string quarterback on one of the worst college football teams in America, Danny O'Connor's life changes when a new coach named Bud Sullivan is hired and begins showing Danny and his teammates how to build the confidence they need to turn around their losing ways. Over the course of 3 years, Bud lays the foundation for one of the greatest turnarounds in college football history, and Danny learns invaluable lessons that will last him a lifetime. As this story plays out, you will learn important truths about the role confidence plays in your life, along with the practical, real-world methods used by some of the greatest coaches of all time for instantly generating self-confidence. Confidence building is an ongoing process, and the techniques in this book, when used regularly, will generate the type of confidence that can turn around any situation and ignite winning streaks in every area of your life. Darrin Donnelly, sportsforthesoul.com. Chapter 1. The man who views the world at 50 the same as he did at 20 has wasted 30 years of his life. Muhammad Ali, 3-time world heavyweight champion. Friday afternoon, August 30th, 2019. 30 years. 30 years! There's no way it has been that long. I won't go so far as to use that tired cliché about it feeling just like yesterday. The graying of my hair, the crow's feet around my eyes, the fact that I haven't run a 40-yard dash in, 30 years. It all reminds me I'm not in college anymore. But I'm not an old man either. Am I? 10 years removed from the glory days of college feels about right. Maybe 20, but not 30. No way. Yet here I am, walking through the campus quad, just like I did nearly every day 3 decades ago. Only this time I'm not late for class or on my way to the football facility. I'm strolling along with Sherry, my wife of 29 years. The main reason for this trip is tomorrow's football game and the 30-year reunion of the 1989 Arkansas A&M football team. I was the senior quarterback on that team, and many of my old teammates are meeting for a tailgate party before the game. At halftime, we'll walk out onto the field and wave to the crowd. I'm looking forward to catching up with several of the guys I haven't seen in years. The fall semester at Arkansas A&M University has already started, and though it's getting late in the day on a Friday, it's still lively here at the center of campus. The busiest place is the Student Union, a building 4 times the size it was when I was a student here. We'll make our way over there shortly. There's an impressive campus bookstore inside, packed with all the bulldog apparel a visiting alumnus could ask for. Sherry grabs my arm and pulls us off the sidewalk path when she notices a freed-up stone bench underneath a large shade tree. "Let's take a seat," she says. "I want to enjoy the view for a minute." I sit next to her and notice she is smiling big. "Takes you back, doesn't it?" I say. "It really does." She squeezes my hand. We both spent 5 years as students here. The memories come rushing back. It's a typically hot and humid late summer day in Jolene, Arkansas, and it's nice to take a seat in the shade. A strong breeze blowing through the big green trees on campus cools the sweat on my forehead. From the bench, Sherry and I enjoy the campus scene. Many students have gathered in groups, telling stories and laughing. Some have staked out an area of freshly cut grass where they're lying down to read books or just enjoy the sunshine. A few couples walk tightly together, not necessarily hand in hand. Maybe that's not a thing anymore, but close enough to make it clear they're together. A handful of professor types engage in conversations with students or with each other. Nothing too serious, lots of smiles and laughs. It's too early in the semester for stressed-out students or faculty squabbles. Everyone looks happy and excited. Even those students who are more purposefully hurrying along or typing away on their phones have smiles, or at least hints of a smile, on their faces. First exams are still a couple weeks off, and there's unbridled hope in the atmosphere. That feeling that a new year is upon us and anything is possible. It doesn't hurt that today is the Friday afternoon of Labor Day weekend, a 3-day weekend that just happens to include the first football game of the season on Saturday. The vibe is infectious, and I can't help but grin as I inhale and take it all in. College. There's nothing like those days. They go by fast. Too fast. Arkansas A&M will host Vanderbilt tomorrow in the season opener. The Bulldogs are expected to win, but you never know how those first games are going to go. I think back to my days as a player here. That nervousness mixed with excitement and adrenaline in the days, hours, and moments before a game. I think of that old, dingy locker room. Nothing like the plush new facilities players enjoy these days. I think of sitting on that wooden bench in our locker room, my foot tapping incessantly on the concrete floor as kickoff approached. I think of Bud Sullivan giving us one of his fired-up speeches before taking the field. Bud Sullivan. The man is now a coaching legend, a member of the College Football Hall of Fame. He would coach Arkansas A&M for 21 seasons and win a national championship along the way. But when he was first announced as our head coach, none of us had ever heard of him. I was lucky to be a part of those first teams with Bud as the coach. What if he hadn't been hired here? My life would have turned out completely different. Bud took over one of the worst college football programs in the country and taught us how to win. He taught us that winning begins within. He taught us that winners see themselves differently. He taught us that how you see yourself determines your level of success or failure in every area of life. He taught us how to believe in ourselves. He taught us the importance of self-confidence. No matter how dire or difficult things have sometimes gotten in my life, I've always been able to rely on the lessons Bud taught us. They have never let me down. What I learned in the 3 years with Bud Sullivan as my coach, and the 30 years since, equipped me to chase my biggest dreams and live my life to the fullest. He taught me what it means to develop true confidence, not fake confidence. He showed me how confidence can instantly ignite a turnaround in any difficult situation. He trained me to see how my focus and expectations determine my experiences. He taught me that no matter how difficult a situation gets, there is always a way to turn things around if I truly believe in myself. 30 years of life experience after my time here have only reinforced the truth of the lessons he taught me and everyone else on our team. I shake my head. Unreal to think 3 decades have passed since I went to school here. 30 years ago this week I was walking this very quad, and just starting my final year at Arkansas A&M. I know this sounds crazy, but I don't feel like it's been that long since we were students here, Sherry says, echoing my exact thoughts. Remember how excited we were about what the future might bring? I nod, remembering those feelings. Being on campus, the nostalgia is thick, and I feel those feelings boiling up inside. The feeling that anything is possible, and you've got your whole life in front of you. I think back to my days here, the fun we had and the excitement I felt, the music of the 80s, hair bands, Springsteen, and a new thing called rap, the football of the 80s, the wishbone offense, giant shoulder pads, and the old Southwest Conference, laughing with guys who would become lifelong friends, walking in the quad with my future wife, bonding with my teammates as we battled through grueling 2-a-day practices in the oppressive summer heat, and backyard parties running late into the night during the off-season, something that now sounds exhausting to me. I chuckle to myself as the memories come flooding back. But then I remember the dark times, the bad path I was headed down, the self-doubt, the cynicism, and the humiliation I felt. A year and a half into my college career, I wanted to quit and never come back to this place. I was actually embarrassed to be a college football player here. Pretty much everybody on the team was. That's when Bud Sullivan showed up and the turnaround began. The turnaround for our team, one of the most impressive turnarounds in college football history, but also the turnaround in my life. I would not be living the life I now love living if it had not been for Coach Bud Sullivan. That I am sure of. Chapter 2. I think a coach has every right to be demanding, and should be demanding, but you've got no right to be demeaning to another person. R.C. Slocum, Hall of Fame college football coach. 1986. 2 months before I had ever heard of Bud Sullivan, I suffered through the most embarrassing afternoon of my life. It was a dreary early November Saturday back in 1986. I was in my second year at Arkansas A&M. This was long before I was known to sports fans across America as Dan O'Connor, host of The Dan O'Connor Show, a nationally syndicated sports talk radio show. Back then, the few who knew me by name called me Danny O'Connor. To most, I was just a nameless scout team quarterback who never saw the field. At least that's what I was before that dreadful Saturday when I did finally enter a game. I had redshirted during my first season, a technique used by college programs to save players a season of eligibility if they're not good enough to play during their first year with the program, which made me a redshirt freshman for the '86 season. I spent most of the year as the scout team quarterback, the guy who ran the opposing team's offense in practice, battling for the fourth team spot on one of the worst college football teams in the country. Through a stroke of luck, very bad luck as it would turn out, I was thrown in as the starting QB for our home game against Rice University on this particular Saturday. Here's how it happened. Earlier in the week, our first team QB injured his shoulder in practice, and the team doctor said he'd have to miss the Rice game. A week before that, our second team QB quit the team, and a week before that, our third team QB got kicked off the team. Heading into our 8th game of the season, I was promoted above Mike Peterson, the guy who had been 4th on the depth chart most of the season. He was a true freshman, and our coach, Wade Wyatt, didn't want to burn his red shirt, especially when our 1-6 record up to that point had already guaranteed us another losing season near the bottom of the conference standings. Our stadium was only about 1/4 full when Rice came to town. The Owls were 2-6, and both our teams were trying to stay out of last place in the old Southwest Conference, SWC. This was supposed to be our best chance to pick up a conference win, something that hadn't happened in 4 years for Arkansas A&M. But thanks to my epically horrendous performance that afternoon, the only thing we would win was the race to see which one of our teams could reach 7 losses first. Just before I ran onto the field for my first collegiate start, Coach Wyatt grabbed me by the arm, gave me a fierce look, and said, "We're all counting on you. Do not screw this up." I nodded and gulped simultaneously. I ran out to the huddle and called the first play. We broke the huddle, and I walked to the line of scrimmage with shaky legs, telling myself, "I'm not ready for this. I'm not ready for this. Don't screw up. Don't screw up." On the first snap of my first game as the starting quarterback, I fumbled the ball and Rice recovered on our 17-yard line. They scored a touchdown 3 plays later. My second play of the game, I threw an interception that Rice returned for a touchdown. A few plays later, I threw another interception. In the second quarter, I fumbled the ball into our end zone and Rice recovered it for a touchdown. In 1 half of play, I completed just 1 pass in 9 attempts, for a gain of 3 yards, fumbled the ball twice, and threw 2 interceptions, as I led our team to a 28-0 halftime deficit. Coach Wyatt, wearing his giant trademark cowboy hat and with his deep, slow 2-packs-a-day smoker's drawl, addressed the team at halftime by saying, "Needless to say, we'll be going with the other guy at quarterback in the second half." The other guy was Peterson, the true freshman I was promoted in front of prior to the game, Apparently, burning his red shirt on a game we were destined to lose was worth it if it meant putting an end to my embarrassing performance. Without me in there, the team played better, but I had dug us too deep of a hole. We lost 38-14. Standing on the sidelines during the second half of the game, I wanted to hide from the world. I couldn't wait for the game to end. Only one teammate dared to say a word to me. To the rest, it was like I was contagious and my teammates didn't want to be infected with whatever was making me play so horribly. Brian Dawson, my roommate and our team's starting linebacker, was the only guy who talked to me. Midway through the fourth quarter, he slapped me on the back of my pads and said, "Look at it this way, Danny boy, it can't get any worse." With a stone face, I turned to Brian and saw his big grin quickly fade away. "Too early, I get it," he said as he put his helmet on and walked away. After the game, Coach Wyatt gave what little self-esteem I had left one final knockout blow. He walked up to me, looked me in the eye, and said loud enough for half the locker room to hear, "Well, congratulations, Danny. You took the one chance this team had at turning things around and blew it for us. But if you think you feel bad, think of how I feel. I'm the idiot who recruited you. You don't belong at this level, son, and you never did." Talk about a punch to the gut. Actually, a punch to the gut would have felt better, and its lingering effects would not have lasted as long. Wyatt walked away, shaking his head, and he never said another word to me. Literally. From that point on, he barely looked my direction at practice, and I didn't see another down of playing time the rest of the season. Not that I wanted to play another down. I spent the next few weeks of practice with my eyes low and my mouth shut, doing the bare minimum I could get away with as the scout team quarterback. I didn't want to make any more mistakes that would lead to ridicule from Wyatt or my position coach. The Saturday after Thanksgiving, we lost to Arkansas 55-0. Wyatt was fired moments after the clock hit 0 in our final game of the season, a loss that gave us a record of 1-10 and another last-place finish in the SWC. The 1986 season marked the 8th straight year the Arkansas A&M Bulldogs finished either last or next to last in the conference. It marked the 4th straight season this team had failed to win a single conference game. The school had seen enough of Wade Wyatt. His 4-year reign, a reign that produced a whopping 5 victories, was mercifully ended after the lopsided loss to Arkansas. Wyatt didn't address us after the game. Somebody either told him he was fired or he simply assumed. Either way, Wyatt walked right out of the stadium, got into his big silver Cadillac, and drove himself back to Texas. We never saw him again. Not a tear was shed as news of Wyatt's firing washed through our locker room. In fact, gleeful relief is the feeling that came over me and my teammates when we got word he was gone. We shared high fives and big laughs. Outsiders observing our post-game locker room scene would have thought we were celebrating a victory. They would have had no idea we just embarrassed ourselves with a 55-0 defeat. We didn't care about the loss. We were just glad Coach Wyatt was gone. But the sense of relief we felt that night didn't last long. Chapter 3. If self-confidence is so important, why would we ever want to approach someone in a manner that might disrupt or shatter it? Pete Carroll, winner of 2 national titles and 1 Super Bowl. Weeks went by after Wyatt's firing. The semester ended, I was heading back home for Christmas, and we still didn't have a new head coach. This wasn't all that surprising. Who would want the job? Arkansas A&M had been a struggling football program long before Wade Wyatt rolled into town, promising to toughen up this pampered group of slackers, as he put it during his introductory press conference. The Bulldogs hadn't had a winning season since joining the SWC in 1972. There were rumors the other schools in the conference wanted to kick us out of the league for not pulling our weight. Coach Wyatt was supposed to be the program's savior. He had been a long-time assistant coach in the college ranks. Arkansas A&M was his first and only stint as a head coach. The short-tempered Texan had promised to crack the whip on the Bulldogs. He coached through fear and intimidation. He loved to be feared, and we feared him all right. We were terrified of making mistakes. Few were safe from Wyatt's wrath, and we did our best to avoid it. The interesting thing was that the more we feared making mistakes, the more we made them. In Wyatt's 4 seasons, Arkansas A&M led the conference in turnovers and penalties each year. Though I don't remember them keeping stats for missed blocks and missed tackles back then, I'm sure we led the conference in those categories as well. As I paint this unappealing picture of Coach Wade Wyatt, it's fair to question why I signed with Arkansas A&M and agreed to play for a coach like him in the first place. 2 reasons. 1, because my high school girlfriend, Sherry, was going to the same college. And 2, because it was the only Division I school that offered me a scholarship. There wasn't much else to consider. I was an undersized athlete from a small town in southeast Kansas, not far from the Arkansas border. I grew up poor. My dad was in and out of jail, and my mom was an alcoholic. I don't remember either of them ever holding a job for more than a few months at a time. There was a lot of fear and tension in our house. They were always arguing, fighting, splitting up, and then reuniting. As a family, we were constantly moving. Tiny rundown houses, trailer parks, cement-walled basement rentals, we lived in all of them. When I got to high school, I spent most of my time crashing with friends. Looking back now, I understand better the pressures that made my parents the way they were. My dad had grown up thinking he'd graduate high school, get a good-paying job at the local mill, work his 40 hours a week, and provide a nice, secure living for his family. That's what his father and his father's father had done. That's what the O'Connor men had always done since immigrating from Ireland. There was no need for a college degree. But by the late 1970s and early 1980s, the job landscape was changing dramatically for blue-collar workers like my dad. I was too young to remember when the textile mill in our little town closed its doors. All I know is that my old man lost a good-paying job and never got back on his feet. He found new jobs here and there, but they never paid anything close to what he made at the mill, and the new jobs were never stable. When things got really bad, he'd do something stupid and end up going to jail for a while. My mom left my dad several times. Sometimes she would take me and my sister with her. Sometimes she wouldn't. From a young age, I knew something wasn't right with my mom, and by the time I was old enough to understand she was escaping from reality with alcohol, it didn't matter much to me. I never really knew her in the first place. The environment I grew up in didn't look anything like those John Hughes movies my friends and I watched in high school. But I dreamed of a life like that. I dreamed of having a happy family, a nice house, a clean yard, things to be proud of. When I saw people in movies and on TV living those lives, I would daydream about what that must be like. I wanted to have a fun and loving family. I wanted to feel safe and secure. I didn't want to be afraid all the time. I knew if I wanted to create the type of life I dreamed of, I couldn't follow in my parents' footsteps. I needed to go to college and become the first O'Connor to get a degree. That was the key. But wanting to go to college and affording to go to college were 2 very different things. That's where football came in. The town I grew up in was one of those football-crazed small towns where everything shut down on Friday nights. That love of the game rubbed off on me at a young age. When I started playing tackle football in junior high, I realized I was good at football. A few of the other parents would pat me on the back after games and tell me how impressed they were. They didn't care who my parents were, or how poor I was, or where I...
Sample complete. Ready to continue?